Sterling Pyle heard the sound before he saw anything, a low, guttural moan that didn't belong to any healthy animal. He'd been checking the fire roads above Copper Creek when it reached him through the morning fog, somewhere between a growl and a human sob. He left his truck running and grabbed his rifle from the rack, not to shoot. Sterling hadn't fired at a living thing in 20 years, but mountain protocol demanded respect for the unknown. The September air bit through his uniform jacket as he picked his way down the embankment, boots sliding on wet leaves. The sound came again. Closer, through the gray mist. He saw it, a bobcat, hunched over something near the creek bed. The animal's spotted coat was matted with mud, ribs showing through patchy fur, but it was the scarring that made Sterling's breath catch old burns along the creature's right flank. The ear half melted away. "Silas," he whispered. The bobcat lifted its head. Those amber eyes held none of the wild fear Sterling expected. Instead, they carried something heavier. The animal placed one paw protectively over a filthy canvas bag, the kind sailors used 50 years ago, and made that sound again, half moan, half question. Sterling had seen grief in animals before. Wolves calling for dead mates, bears returning to where cubs had died. But this was different. This was vigil. The bag beneath Silas's paw was tied with complex knots, bowlines, and sheet bends that Sterling recognized immediately. Thaddeus Vance had been merchant marine before he became a woodcarver, before he became a hermit, before tragedy drove him up Black Rock Mountain to live alone for 40 years. A dark stain spread across one corner of the bag. Sterling's hand moved to his radio, then stopped. Fresh blood. "But who's easy, boy?" Sterling said, though he knew better than to talk to a wild bobcat like a house cat. "What happened? Where's Thaddeus?" Silas shifted, and Sterling saw the animal's left hind leg trembled with exhaustion. How long had he been here? The morning dew had soaked through the bobcat's fur, but the ground beneath him was dry. Hours at least, maybe days. Sterling keyed his radio. "Martha, you there?" Static crackled before the dispatcher's voice came through. "Morning? Sterling, early for you, isn't it? Need you to send someone up to Thaddeus Vance's cabin on Black Rock. Welfare check." A pause. "That old hermit, he hasn't answered his door in 20 years. What's wrong?" Sterling watched Silas's eyes, those unsettling, almost human eyes that had spooked half the town when Thaddeus first brought the burned kit down for veterinary care 6 years ago. "Just send someone, Martha, quick as you can." He set down his rifle and took a step forward. Silas didn't growl, didn't bare teeth. The bobcat just pressed down harder on the bag, as if the weight of his paw could keep whatever was inside from escaping into the world. "What's in there, Silas?" "What are you protecting?" The bobcat's gaze shifted to the bag, then back to Sterling, waiting, deciding. Sterling had been a ranger for 27 years. He'd seen bears with cubs, rattlesnakes cornered, even a rabid coyote once. But he'd never seen an animal look so deliberately at a human and make a choice. Silas stood, favoring his weak leg, and stepped back 3 paces, an invitation or a test. Sterling approached the bag slowly, noting how Silas's muscles tensed, but the animal didn't flee. Up close, the canvas reeked of cedar oil and something else, the distinctive scent of Thaddeus's workshop. All wood shavings and linseed oil, and 60 years of carved dreams. The knots were swollen with moisture but expertly tied. Sterling worked at them with cold fingers, aware of Silas, watching every movement. The first knot released, then the second. His radio crackled. "Sterling, Deputy Miller just radioed. He's at the Vance cabin." Martha's voice had changed, softer now. "Thaddeus is dead. Looks like he passed in his sleep. Been gone maybe 4 days." 4 days? Sterling looked at Silas, understanding flooding through him. 4 days of guarding whatever Thaddeus had thought important enough to entrust to a wild animal. "Martha, Tell Miller to search the cabin. See if there's any indication why Sterling stopped as the bag finally opened. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, were 3 pairs of wooden shoes, child-sized, carved with a master's precision. Each heel bore the same inscription: Samuel Vance, age 7. Sterling knew that name. Everyone in Boone knew about Thaddeus's son who did in 1959, but there was more in the bag: a leather journal, pages yellow with age, a mason jar filled with what looked like chestnuts, and at the bottom, an envelope with shaky handwriting: for Beaumont Pike, your real inheritance. Sterling, you still there? He couldn't answer. Beaumont Pike was Boone's most successful hunting guide, a man who'd built his reputation on tracking mountain game, a man who, as far as Sterling knew, had no connection to Thaddeus Vance, except mutual disgust, the hermit who saved animals and the guide who killed them for sport. Silas made a sound, not quite a growl, more like a question. The bobcat's eyes fixed on something behind Sterling. Well, well. The voice was cold as the creek water. Finally decided to die. Did he? Sterling turned. Beaumont Pike stood on the bank above, a rifle casual in his hands. 2 clients flanking him in orange vests despite bow season. The man was 69, but moved like someone who'd never left the mountains, even when he had— Beaumont, Sterling said carefully. Thaddeus passed 4 days ago. Something flickered across Beaumont's weathered face, too quick to identify. His gaze locked on the bag, on the small wooden shoes visible in Sterling's hands. Those are Samuel's. The words came out cracked, as if pulled from some deep place Beaumont had sealed off. He made those after the boy died. Wouldn't let anyone touch them. You knew Thaddeus. Beaumont's laugh was bitter as wood smoke. Knew him, Sterling. That man destroyed my whole life. And now he's left his wild pet to guard his garbage. He raised the rifle slightly, not quite pointing it at Silas, but making the threat clear. That cat killed 2 of Luke Jennings' calves last week. I'm within my rights. No, Sterling said firmly, moving between Beaumont and the bobcat. Silas has been here for days. Look at him. He hasn't eaten, hasn't hunted. He's been guarding this bag. So, Sterling held up the envelope. Because there's something here with your name on it. Beaumont's hand trembled as he reached for the envelope. The paper felt damp, soft as old cloth between his fingers. Sterling watched the man's jaw work, teeth grinding against whatever words wanted to escape. Can't be for me. Beaumont's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Old man hasn't acknowledged I existed since the morning sun broke through the fog, casting long shadows across the creek bed. Silas hadn't moved, his amber eyes tracking between the 2 men. The bobcat's breathing came shallow and quick, the exhaustion showing now in how his hindquarters swayed. Sterling's radio crackled. Sterling, you need to hear this. Martha's voice carried an edge he'd rarely heard in their 20 years working together. Deputy Miller found something in Thaddeus's cabin, a will. Everything's left to— Don't say it over the radio. Sterling cut her off, aware of Beaumont's clients shifting nervously on the bank above. We'll handle it in person. Beaumont hadn't opened the envelope. He stared at his name written in Thaddeus's shaking script, thumb running over the letters. You know what this man did to me? No, course not. Nobody knows because nobody asked. Beaumont's free hand moved to his rifle strap. An unconscious gesture Sterling had seen in men who needed something solid to hold. I lived with him 5 years after my parents died. His brother, my father, wrapped his car around a pine tree when I was 5. Sterling felt the air shift. Even Silas seemed to sense it, his ears flicking forward. Thaddeus took me in, taught me wood carving in that shop of his, let me work beside Samuel's ghost every damn day. Beaumont's laugh came out broken. You know what it's like being compared to a dead kid. Everything I carved, everything I did, Samuel would have done it this way. Samuel had such gentle hands. Well, Samuel was dead, and I was alive, and that seemed to be the problem. The envelope crinkled in Beaumont's grip. Behind them, a truck engine growled closer. Luke Jennings's diesel. Sterling recognized the knock in the pistons. Then Margaret died. Beaumont continued, and suddenly I'm on a Greyhound to Tennessee. No explanation, just gone. Silas made a low sound, not quite a growl. The Bobcat's gaze fixed on the approaching truck. Sterling saw it then, the rifle in Luke's gun rack, the determination in how he parked. This was about to get complicated. Beaumont, Sterling said quietly, what's in that jar? The seeds? The older man's face went pale. No, he wouldn't have. He promised those were mine. Luke Jennings slammed his truck door hard enough to send a murder of crows exploding from the sycamores. The rancher's boots hit the ground heavy, each step deliberate as he descended the embankment. His Remington 700 swung loose in his right hand, not quite aimed, but ready. That's the cat, Luke said, pointing the rifle barrel toward Silas. That's the one that tore up my calves. Sterling stepped forward, putting himself between Luke and the Bobcat. The seeds in the mason jar rattled as he moved, definitely chestnuts, but something about them looked different, larger. The shells had an unusual reddish tint. When did you lose the calves? Luke, 3 nights back. Found them yesterday morning. Luke's finger tapped against the trigger guard. Throats torn out, haunches eaten. That's cat work. 3 nights back, Silas was here. And Sterling kept his voice level, watching Luke's finger. Look at the ground under him. That dirt's been dry for days while everything else is soaked with dew. He hasn't moved. Beaumont's clients had made their way down the bank. Expensive boots slipping on the wet stones. One of them, a soft-looking man in new Patagonia gear, whispered something about calling the authorities. His companion, leaner and sun-damaged, just watched with the detached interest of someone who'd paid good money for mountain adventure. I don't care where he's been, Luke said. I've got 2 dead calves worth $3,000. State law says I can protect my livestock. Sterling felt sweat gather between his shoulder blades, despite the morning chill behind him. Silas shifted, a wet wheeze escaping the exhausted animal's throat. State law also gives me 72 hours to investigate livestock predation, Sterling said. You shoot that animal now. It's poaching. Luke's face flushed red from his collar to his John Deere cap. You taking the side of a wild cat over a taxpayer? I'm taking the side of the law. Beaumont still held the unopened envelope, his thumb working the corner until the paper started to separate. His eyes stayed locked on the mason jar in Sterling's hand. Those seeds, Beaumont said quietly. Let me see them. Sterling held up the jar. Inside, maybe 200 chestnuts caught the morning light. Beaumont's breath hitched. American chestnuts. But that's impossible. The blight killed them all by Not all, Sterling said, remembering something Thaddeus had mentioned years ago at the farmer's market. Thaddeus claimed he'd found resistant trees, said he'd been breeding them. Beaumont's hand shook as he reached for the jar. He promised to show me when I was 10, maybe 11, said when I was older. We'd hike up to his secret grove, and I'd help him save the forest. His voice cracked. Never happened. Luke spat tobacco juice into the creek. This is touching and all, but I've got dead livestock and a cat that needs putting down. Read the journal, Sterling said to Beaumont, pulling the leather-bound book from the bag. Maybe it explains. The book fell open to a marked page. Thaddeus's careful handwriting filled the yellowed paper. Sterling caught the date at the top, September 15, 3 days ago. Beaumont read aloud, his voice tight. If someone other than Beaumont Pike reads this, know that I've failed twice. Once as an uncle who couldn't say the words that mattered. Once as a man who couldn't face his own cowardice. Luke lowered his rifle slightly. Even his paying clients leaned in. Beaumont continued. The boy came to me broken, 5 years old, watching his parents burn in that car because my brother was too proud to admit he'd been drinking. I took Beaumont in, but I was already hollowed out from losing Samuel. Margaret barely spoke anymore. The house was a tomb. Sterling watched Beaumont's knuckles go white where he gripped the journal. I taught him wood carving because I didn't know how to talk to him. Every time he smiled, I saw my brother. Every time he cried, I saw Samuel. Margaret died thinking I loved a ghost more than the living boy in my care. She was right. Silas made a sound, half growl, half whine. The bobcat's legs shook with the effort of staying upright. After Margaret passed, I couldn't look at him. Sent him to cousins in Tennessee. Told myself it was for his own good. Truth was, I was a coward. The boy reminded me of everyone I'd failed. Luke shifted his weight. Tobacco juice forgotten, dripping from his lip. Beaumont turned the page with trembling fingers. The next entry was dated 1970. He came back, 15 years old. I saw him through the window, standing in the yard where I taught him to identify wood grain. He stood there for an hour. I hid like the coward I am. When he finally left, I found something he'd dropped. Beaumont stopped reading. His eyes scanned ahead. Then his face went gray. What? Sterling asked. What did you drop? Beaumont's voice came out strangled. A carving. A bobcat. My first good piece. Sterling heard it, then the sound of another vehicle approaching. Not just one. Several. And they were coming fast. 3 patrol cars and Martha's personal Subaru pulled up to the creek bank. Dust swirled in the morning air, mixing with the fog still clinging to the water. Martha climbed out first, her orthopedic shoes grinding against the gravel. She carried a manila folder and a thermos, always prepared, even for death and its complications. Sterling, we need to talk. She glanced at the assembled group, Luke with his rifle, Beaumont's paying clients, the trembling bobcat. Privately, whatever you've got to say it here. Beaumont's voice carried an edge Sterling hadn't heard before. I'm done with secrets. Martha descended the embankment carefully, her bad knee making her grip each tree for support. Deputy Miller followed, hand resting on his service weapon. A kid, really, maybe 25, still jumping at shadows. Mr. Pike, Martha said, stopping 10 feet away. She used the formal tone she reserved for next-of-kin notifications. The will names you as primary beneficiary, Shamushi. The cabin, the workshop, 20 acres on Black Rock Mountain. Luke's rifle drooped. Thaddeus left everything to him. They hated each other. No, Martha said, pulling papers from the folder. There's a codicil, everything except, and I quote, what Silas guards belongs to Beaumont Pike, my brother's son, whom I failed. The pages shook in the morning breeze. Beaumont hadn't moved, hadn't breathed that Sterling could see. There's more, Martha continued. A letter from Judge Eleanor Hayes. She was supposed to deliver this years ago, but Thaddeus asked her to wait until... She paused, swallowed. Until he was dead. She handed Beaumont a cream-colored envelope, the kind the courthouse used for official documents. The old man's fingers fumbled with the seal. Sterling watched Silas sway, catch himself, sway again. The bobcat's eyes had gone glassy. How much longer could the animal stay upright? Beaumont read silently, his face cycling through expressions too fast to track. Then he laughed, a sound like bark being stripped from a tree. He knew the whole time. He knew where I was. Beaumont held up the letter, hired a private investigator. has reports. Vietnam in 70, my guide business in Montana, my divorce, every year on my birthday. His voice broke. What? Sterling asked. Money, anonymous deposits. I thought it was VA benefits getting adjusted. It was him, $1,000 every year. Beaumont's hands crushed the letter. Why didn't he just call me? The journal lay open in Sterling's hands. He flipped pages, found an entry from 2010. Beaumont returned to Boone today, saw him at the hardware store buying rifle ammunition. He's become what I feared, a killer. Takes rich men into the mountains to shoot what I've spent 40 years protecting. This is my fault. If I'd kept him, taught him properly, maybe he'd build instead of destroy. That's not true, Luke said suddenly. Everyone turned. The rancher's face had gone red. Beaumont donates half his guide fees to wildlife conservation. Bought the Mitcham tract last year just to keep it from developers. Beaumont's clients exchanged glances. The soft one in Patagonia spoke up. We're not here to hunt. We're here to photograph. Beaumont knows every animal trail in these mountains. Sterling felt the pieces clicking together, wrongly assembled history, rearranging itself into truth. The journal's next entry was dated a week later. Saw Beaumont's truck at the cemetery. He'd left flowers on Margaret and Samuel's graves. Plastic flowers the boy never could tell real from fake. But he remembered. After 45 years, he remembered. I waited until he left. Coward. Deputy Miller's radio squawked. Got a situation at the Vance cabin. Someone broke in. Martha grabbed the radio. When? Can't tell, but there's blood on the doorframe, fresh. Sterling looked at the stain on the canvas bag. The blood he'd noticed earlier. Fresh blood, but not human, too dark. Wrong smell. Animal blood. Silas, he said quietly. You were hurt. You went to Thaddeus for help. The bobcat's legs gave out. The animal collapsed beside the creek, sides heaving, foam tinged pink with blood gathered at the corners of his mouth. Internal injuries, Beaumont said, dropping to his knees beside the cat. He's been standing here dying. Why didn't he just leave? Wild animals don't do this. And Sterling found the answer in the journal's final entry, written in shaking script. Silas came to me tonight, bleeding, caught in someone's illegal snare. Got him free, but he's hurt bad. No time to get him to Doc Henley. I'm so tired, chest hurting again. If I die tonight, Silas knows what to do. Spent 6 years teaching him the important places, the important people. He'll find Beaumont. He'll bring him home. Beaumont's hands hovered over the bobcat, afraid to touch. He trained a wild bobcat? No, Sterling said, understanding finally hitting. He didn't train him. He just loved him. Saved him from the fire in 2018, nursed him back. The cat's been free to leave for 6 years. He stayed because he wanted to, like I could have, Beaumont whispered. The bobcat's breathing grew more labored. Blood now ran freely from his mouth. The snare had done internal damage, maybe punctured a lung. 3, 4 days of standing guard while bleeding internally. We need Doc Henley, Sterling said, reaching for his radio. Won't make it in time, Luke said quietly. That cat's got minutes, not hours. Beaumont peeled off his jacket, laid it over the shivering animal. You found me. You did what he asked. His voice cracked. You can let go now. Silas's eye focused on Beaumont's face. The bobcat made one more sound, soft, almost like a question. The seeds, Sterling said suddenly. He's asking about the seeds. Beaumont grabbed the mason jar, held it where Silas could see. I've got them. I'll plant everyone, the whole forest, like he planned. The bobcat's eyes shifted to the journal, then back to Beaumont. Sterling flipped through pages frantically, found a section near the back, a map hand-drawn. And underneath, coordinates. The mother trees, he breathed. Silas knows where they are. The bobcat's breathing stopped. Beaumont's hands pressed against Silas's still warm fur. No breath stirred the bobcat's ribs. The pink foam at his mouth had stopped bubbling. The animal's amber eyes remained open, fixed on something beyond the morning sky. He held on for 4 days, Beaumont said, his voice rough as sandpaper. 4 days, bleeding inside, just to deliver a message. Sterling felt the weight of the mason jar in his hands. The seeds rattled against glass as his grip tightened. Around them, the morning had gone silent. No bird calls, no insect buzz. Even the creek seemed to run quieter. Doc Henley's truck rumbled up to the bank. The old veterinarian climbed out, medical bag in hand, but Sterling could see from his expression that he already knew. Henley had that particular slouch that came from arriving too late too many times. "Martha radioed," Henley said, making his way down the embankment. His boots found the same footholds they'd used for 40 years of creek calls. "Said you had an injured—" He stopped, seeing Silas. "Damn." The vet knelt beside the bobcat, his practiced hands running along the animal's body. Sterling watched him pause at the rib cage, probe gently, then check the mouth and gums. "Snare caught him here." Henley pointed to deep lacerations around Silas's chest, hidden beneath the fur. "Wire type, probably meant for coyotes. When he fought to get free, it punctured through, caught a lung maybe. See this blood, dark, almost black? That's internal bleeding, been going on for days." Luke shifted his weight, boots scraping stone. "Who's running snares up here? That's illegal, unless you've got a depredation permit." Sterling finished. "Luke, you applied for one last week for coyotes killing calves." The rancher's face flushed. "I never set snares, just the permit, in case what?" Beaumont stood slowly, his knees popping. "In case you needed legal cover for someone else's snares." "Now hold on, your calves," Sterling said, the pieces falling together. "Doc, you mind taking a look at photos from Luke's place dead livestock from 3 nights ago?" Henley pulled out his phone as Luke described the injuries. The vet's eyebrows climbed toward his hairline as he studied the images Luke reluctantly showed him. "These aren't cat kills," Henley said flatly. "See the bite pattern, too narrow for a bobcat's jaw. And here." He zoomed in on one image. "These tears are from pulling, not the clean cuts a cat makes. Dogs did this, probably feral ones." Sterling felt the air change, that particular tension that comes before someone breaks. Luke's hand moved to his hip, where men who'd grown up here always reached when cornered. "Beaumont paid me," Luke said, the words tumbling out. $500 to say it was the bobcat, said the cat was dangerous, said it would eventually hurt someone. Beaumont's clients exchanged glances. The one in Patagonia pulled out his phone, started recording. These city people and their documentation instinct. "I never paid you a damn thing," Beaumont said, but Sterling heard the catch in his voice. "Not directly." Luke pulled out his phone, showed a Venmo transaction. "Your assistant, Cheryl, said you authorized it." Beaumont grabbed the phone. His face went white, then red. "I fired Cheryl 2 weeks ago. She's been using my business accounts." He turned to his clients. "Did she book you this trip?" The lean one nodded. "Said you were offering a special rate. Half price for a hunting weekend." "I haven't guided hunters in 2 years," Beaumont said quietly. "Just photographers and hikers." Cheryl knew that. She also knew about— He trailed off, looking at Silas's still form. "Knew about what?" Sterling asked. "I mentioned Thaddeus's bobcat once. How the old man loved that cat more than— Beaumont stopped. She must have thought, if the cat was gone, if there was nothing left of Thaddeus to protect, I'd finally stop coming back here. Martha had been writing in her notebook. She looked up. Pen paused. Coming back here every month, Beaumont admitted. I'd drive up Black Rock Road, park at the trailhead. Never could make myself hike to the cabin, but I'd sit there. Cheryl hated it, said I was obsessed with a ghost. Sterling opened the journal again, flipping through pages. There an entry from 6 months ago. Saw Beaumont's truck again. Third time this month. He sits there for hours, then leaves. I want to walk down, say something, anything. But what words could fix 50 years of silence? I teach Silas the truck sound instead. If something happens to me, he'll know to find Beaumont. He trained the Bobcat to recognize your truck, Sterling said. Beaumont knelt back down beside Silas, his hand touching the scarred ear. All those months, teaching him, and I was right there. His voice broke. We were both right there. Doc Henley had moved to examine the seeds, holding the jar up to the light. These are remarkable. The size, the shell color. Thaddeus actually did it. Didn't he? Found a blight-resistant strain? More than that, Martha said, reading from a document in her folder. According to this report from the State University, he sent them samples 5 years ago. They confirmed it 94% resistance to the fungus that killed the original chestnuts. They wanted to buy his entire stock, offered $50,000. He refused, Sterling asked. Said they belonged to someone else. Never said who. Martha looked at Beaumont. But I'm guessing now we know. Beaumont stood, walked to the creek's edge. Sterling followed, watching the older man's reflection ripple in the slow-moving water. When I was 11, Beaumont said, right before Samuel's birthday, the dead kid's birthday, Thaddeus got drunk. Only time I ever saw it, he pulled out this map, showed me these marks all over the mountains. Said each one was a surviving chestnut, hidden, waiting. Said someday we'd collect seeds from all of them, breed them strong, bring back the whole forest. He picked up a stone, turned it in his fingers. I asked when. He said when I was ready, when I could carve a perfect reproduction of Samuel's shoes. Beaumont threw the stone into the creek. Took me 3 years. By then, Margaret was dead, and I was on a bus to Tennessee. Sterling found another entry, this one from 1960. The boy left his carvings, all of them. Even the shoes, perfect replicas of Samuel's. He's ready. But I'm sending him away tomorrow. I'm a coward and a liar, and he deserves better than the empty man I've become. He kept them, Sterling said. Your carvings. Deputy Miller found them in the workshop. Beaumont turned sharply. What? A whole cabinet, each piece labeled with date and your age. The shoes were in a place of honor. The journal fell open to a page near the back, covered in pressed leaves. Each one was labeled with a location, a date. American chestnut leaves from 70 years of collecting. My God, Doc Henley breathed, looking over Sterling's shoulder. He mapped the entire surviving population. This is 40 years of work. But Sterling had noticed something else. A photograph tucked between pages, so old the edges had yellowed. 2 boys in a workshop, the older maybe 7, the younger 5. The older boy's hands guided the younger ones on a carving tool. Both were laughing. That's you, Sterling said, showing Beaumont. You and Samuel. Beaumont took the photo with shaking hands. On the back, in a woman's writing, Samuel teaching his cousin Beaumont, best friends, named cousin. Beaumont whispered, We were cousins. He never told me. Just said Samuel was his son, and I was— He stopped. Sterling understood. Thaddeus had lost his son, then couldn't bear to tell the nephew that they were actually family. Another secret, another wound. "There's more," Martha said. She'd been reading ahead in the journal. "The fire in 2018, it wasn't random." She showed them the entry. "Fire reached the grove today. My fault. Controlled burn got away from me. 40 years of cultivation burning. Found the kid at the base of the mother tree, the biggest chestnut. His mother died protecting him. Just like the tree survived protecting its offspring, I named him Silas after my brother because they both survived what should have killed them. Maybe that's all any of us can and do, survive and protect what comes after." "He started the fire?" Beaumont's voice was hollow. "Trying to clear underbrush? Forest Service confirmed it controlled burn that jumped containment. They didn't press charges because of his age, and because he lost so much." Martha paused. "The grove, most of his chestnut trees burned." Sterling turned pages frantically. There a map, hand-drawn but precise. His coordinates had marked at the bottom, and a note. 7 trees survived, the mothers. Their seeds are in the jar. Silas knows the path. He's walked it with me every week for 6 years. "But Silas is dead," Luke said quietly. They all looked at the still form of the bobcat. Beaumont had closed the animal's eyes, arranged his body as if sleeping. In death, Silas looked smaller, the fierce wildness replaced by something almost peaceful. "Wait," Sterling said, studying the map. "These coordinates, I know this place. It's not far from here, maybe 2 miles upstream." Doc Henley was examining the bobcat again, this time more carefully. "That's strange. Look at this." He pointed to Silas's paws, fresh dirt under the claws, but not creek mud. "Red clay. That's only found higher up, near the old-growth forest." Beaumont finished. "He went there first, before coming here." Sterling felt his pulse quicken. "He was showing us the path, even dying. He went to the grove first, then came here to find you." They gathered the journal, the seeds, the wooden shoes. Luke helped wrap Silas in Beaumont's jacket, a small grace from a man who'd been ready to shoot the animal an hour ago. "We should go now," Sterling said. "Follow his path while it's fresh." But as they prepared to leave, Deputy Miller's voice crackled over the radio. "Sterling, we've got a problem at the Vance cabin. You need to see this." "What kind of problem?" "Found something in the workshop. Hidden panel in the floor. There's another body." Sterling's truck fishtailed on the gravel as they took the switchback too fast. Beaumont gripped the door handle, his knuckles white against the black plastic. In the truck bed, Silas's body lay wrapped in the jacket, secured with bungee cords, a detail that made Sterling's stomach turn. Behind them, Martha's Subaru struggled to keep pace, Doc Henley riding with her. The Vance cabin sat on a natural shelf of rock, backed against the mountain face, built from hand-hewn logs in the 20s. It had weathered a century of storms. The workshop stood separate, a newer building, maybe 1960s construction, with large windows facing east to catch morning light. Deputy Miller waited on the porch, his face pale beneath his department cap. "Sheriff's on his way from Asheville. Said don't touch anything." "How old is the body?" Sterling asked. "Can't tell. It's not decomposed." "The floor panel was sealed with wax, like a tomb." Beaumont pushed past them into the workshop. Sterling followed, nostrils filling with the familiar scent of cedar shavings and linseed oil. The main room held workbenches, tools arranged with obsessive precision. Carvings in various stages lined the shelves, bowls, toys, decorative pieces. Miller pointed to the corner where a section of flooring had been pried up. "Found it when I dropped my flashlight. Heard it hit hollow." Sterling knelt, peering into the opening. A wooden box, maybe 6 feet long, 2 feet wide, like a coffin, but rougher. The lid had been removed, leaning against the wall. Inside, wrapped in what looked like sailcloth, was a form too small to be an adult. "Jesus Christ," Beaumont whispered. Martha entered, took one look, and pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the coroner." "Wait," Doc Henley said. He'd put on latex gloves, was carefully pulling back the sailcloth. "This isn't—" "Look at this." Underneath the cloth lay clothes a child's outfit from the 1950s, perfectly preserved, but no body, just clothes arranged in the shape of a person, and at the center, where the chest would be, a wooden heart carved from red oak. "It's a memorial," Sterling said, understanding flooding through him. "Not a grave." Beaumont reached into the box, lifted out a small notebook, tucked beside the wooden heart. The cover bore a child's careful printing, Samuel Vance, age 7. Inside, drawings, trees, birds, rough sketches of carvings, and on the last page, in the same child's writing, "When I grow up, I want to be like Uncle Bo. He's teaching me to make things." Beaumont's breathing went ragged. He flipped back through the pages, found more references. "Uncle Bo helped me." "Uncle Bo says wood has feelings." "Uncle Bo is sad sometimes, but he smiles when we carve." "You knew him," Sterling said. "You were here when Samuel was alive." "I don't—" Beaumont stopped, his hand going to his temple. "I was 5 when my parents died. The crash. But before that—" His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "We visited Summers. I remember a workshop. I remember a boy." Martha had been checking records on her phone. Found it. Local newspaper, 1950. Samuel Vance, son of Thaddeus and Margaret Vance, died Thursday of complications from whooping cough. The boy is survived by his parents and his cousin, Beaumont Pike, who had been visiting for the summer. I was here when he died. Beaumont's legs gave out. He sat hard on the workshop floor. "Why don't I remember?" Doc Henley spoke quietly. "Trauma. You were 5. Your cousin dies. Then months later, your parents die. The mind protects itself." Sterling found another compartment in the floor, this one containing papers, legal documents, yellowed with age. His hand shook as he read the first one. "Beaumont, your father didn't die in a simple car accident. According to this police report, he was driving drunk. Hit another car first, killed a family of 3, then wrapped around that tree." Beaumont took the paper, read it slowly. "Thaddeus knew. He was listed as next of kin, had to identify the bodies." Sterling found another document. "And here the other family survivors sued, took everything your father had. Thaddeus paid the settlement, sold off half his land to do it. That's why he couldn't keep me," Beaumont said, the words coming out broken. "Not because he didn't want me. He was broke." "There's more," Martha said, reading from another paper. "Cubs records. The cousins in Tennessee, they returned you after 6 months. Said you were violent, unmanageable. You went into foster care." "I remember that," Beaumont said. "But Thaddeus never came for me." Sterling found the answer in a legal document. He tried. Court denied his petition, said he was unfit single man, no steady income, history of depression after his son's death. The workshop fell silent. Through the windows, Sterling could see the sun climbing higher, burning off the last of the morning fog, the kind of light Thaddeus would have worked by, carving his memories into wood. "All these years," Beaumont said, "hating him for abandoning me, and he was fighting to get me back." Doc Henley had moved to another shelf, examining the carvings there. "These are all signed BP." "These are yours?" Beaumont stood, walked over. His hand traced a rough carved bear, a lopsided bowl, a bird that barely looked like a bird. "My practice pieces." He kept them. Not just kept, Henley said. Look at the dates he added, and these notes. Each piece had a small tag, BP, age 6, first time he got the grain direction right. BP, age 7, learned to sharpen his own tools today. BP, aged 9, made this for Margaret's birthday. Aged 9? Sterling asked. But you left at 5. Beaumont picked up the bowl marked aged 9. His thumb found initials carved in the bottom. BP. I made this? I remember making this. But how? You came back, Martha said, pulling out an old guest register from the county library. Every summer, 1965 to 1970. Beaumont Pike, checked out woodworking books. Same address each time, a foster home in Elizabethton, just over the Tennessee line. That's 2 hours away, Sterling said. You were running away to come here? Beaumont's hand shook as he set down the bowl. I hitchhiked, summers. Told the foster family I had a job at a farm, but I came here. He looked around the workshop with new eyes. Thaddeus never said anything, just let me work. Let me sleep in the loft, fed me. Then I'd leave before school started. Why didn't he keep you? Doc Henley asked. Sterling found the answer in a court document. Restraining order. The foster family filed it in 9. If Thaddeus came within 100 feet of you, he'd go to jail. But I came to him, Beaumont said. And he let you, every summer, risking prison. Martha had tears in her eyes now. Until 1970. That's when I showed up and he wouldn't come out, Beaumont said. I stood in the yard for hours. Finally left that carving the Bobcat. Thought he was rejecting me. Judge Sterling found one more journal entry, dated that same day. The boy came again, taller now, 15, almost a man. I watched from the window like a coward. He doesn't know about the restraining order, doesn't know if I speak to him. I go to jail, and he goes back to foster care. Better he thinks I don't want him. Better he makes his own life. But Lord, it kills me. He left a carving a bobcat, perfect in every detail. The boy has become what I always hoped, and I can't tell him. The room fell silent, except for Beaumont's ragged breathing. Deputy Miller's radio crackled. We've got movement in the woods. Someone's approaching the cabin. They all turned to the window. A figure emerged from the tree line, a woman, elderly but moving with purpose. She carried a shotgun broken over her arm, hunting style. That's Eleanor Hayes, Martha said. What's the judge doing here? Eleanor. Hayes hadn't been a judge for 10 years, but she still walked like she owned whatever ground she stood on. She stopped at the porch, called out, I know you're in there, Beaumont Pike. Time you heard the whole truth. Sterling opened the door. Eleanor's eyes were red-rimmed but fierce. Been waiting 60 years to tell this story, she said. Thaddeus made me promise to wait until he died. Well, he's dead. And you need to know what really happened to Samuel. She stepped inside, set her shotgun by the door. Samuel didn't die of whooping cough, she said. That was the official story. The truth is much worse. Eleanor Hayes pulled a wooden chair from the workbench, its legs scraping against the floor. She sat down slowly, her knuckles white where they gripped her knees. The morning light through the workshop windows caught the deep lines around her mouth, the kind that came from decades of holding back words. I was the county nurse then, she began. Made house calls. Margaret called me that morning, July 15, 1959, said Samuel was sick, burning up with fever. Beaumont stood frozen by the shelf of carvings. Sterling could see the man's chest rising and falling too quickly, like he couldn't get enough air. When I got here, Eleanor continued, Samuel was already gone, but not from fever. She reached into her jacket pocket, pulled out a yellowed medical form. Her hand trembled as she unfolded it. The boy had been carving, teaching someone. There were wood shavings everywhere, 2 sets of tools, a project half finished, a pair of wooden horses. Her voice caught. One larger, one smaller, for two boys to play with. I don't remember horses, Beaumont whispered. You wouldn't. Eleanor's eyes fixed on him. You were covered in blood when I arrived, sitting next to Samuel, trying to wake him up. You kept saying, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. The workshop air felt thick, hard to breathe. Sterling watched Beaumont's legs start to shake. There'd been an accident, Eleanor said. You boys were working on the horses. Samuel was teaching you to use a draw knife, too advanced for a 5-year-old, but Samuel insisted you could do it. The blade slipped. She held up the medical form. Cause of death, severe hemorrhage from severed femoral artery. No, Beaumont said, backing against the wall. No, that's not Samuel had whooping cough. Everyone knows that was the story we told. Eleanor's voice stayed steady, clinical. Thaddeus begged me, said you'd already lost your parents in that crash, couldn't lose your cousin too and know you'd caused it, so I wrote whooping cough on the death certificate. Martha covered her mouth. Doc Henley had gone still as stone. Margaret never forgave herself. Eleanor continued. She'd stepped out to hang laundry, left you boys alone for 20 minutes. By the time she came back, Samuel was gone and you were in shock. Beaumont slid down the wall until he sat on the floor. His hands opened and closed on nothing. The blood, he said, voice hollow. I remember blood on my hands, but my mother said I'd cut myself. Said that's why we couldn't visit Uncle Thaddeus anymore. Your mother lied too, Eleanor said, to protect you. Then after your parents died. Thaddeus couldn't tell you either. How do you tell a traumatized child he killed his best friend? Sterling found himself moving toward Beaumont, but the man held up a hand. Stay back. Every summer I came here, Beaumont said. Thaddeus let me use the tools, taught me, even though I'd... His voice broke completely. Eleanor stood, walked to another section of the workshop. She pushed on a wall panel. It swung open, revealing a small closet. Inside a laptop computer incongruous in this temple to hand tools, and below it, a video camera on a tripod. Thaddeus called me last week, Eleanor said. Asked me to witness something. Said if anything happened to him, I should show this to Beaumont. She opened the laptop, typed in a password. The screen filled with Thaddeus's face, hollow-cheeked, eyes bright with fever or determination. The timestamp read September 14th, 2024, the day before he died. Thaddeus's recorded voice filled the workshop. Beaumont, if you're watching this, I'm gone, and Eleanor's finally told you the truth. Beaumont made a sound like an animal in a trap. On screen. Thaddeus continued, You were 5 years old. Samuel was showing you something too advanced, but he believed in you. Always did. Said you had the best hands he'd ever seen, even at 5. The old man paused, coughed a wet, rattling sound. The draw knife slipped. You tried to grab it, to keep it from falling. Caught Samuel across the leg. Wasn't your fault. I'd sharpened that blade that very morning, cut through everything like butter. Thaddeus held up something to the camera, a draw knife, handle worn smooth from use. This is the same tool. I kept it, used it every day for 60 years. Because Samuel would have wanted me to keep teaching, keep carving, even though the one person I most wanted to teach I had to send away. Sterling saw tears running down Beaumont's face, but the man made no sound. You came back, though. Thaddeus continued, every summer, brave enough to hitchhike 100 miles, and I taught you in silence because words would have meant jail for me and foster care for you. But you learned, Lord, how you learned. The old man reached off screen, brought something into view, a wooden bobcat, intricate and perfect. You left this in 1970. the last time you came. It's the finest carving I've ever seen from someone that young. Museum quality. You became everything Samuel believed you could be." Thaddeus set down the carving, looked directly at the camera. "I failed you, son, called you nephew, but you were my son in every way that mattered. Should have fought harder, should have told the truth, should have chosen you over my cowardice." A coughing fit interrupted. When it passed, Thaddeus looked grayer. "But I'm choosing now. Eleanor has documents. Adoption papers I filed in Owl City after your parents died. Courts rejected them, but I tried. Tried every year until you turned 18. 23 petitions total." Beaumont's breathing had gone ragged. Martha knelt beside him, put a hand on his shoulder. "There's something else," Thaddeus said on screen. "About Silas. Found him the day after the fire I caused. His mother died protecting him, just like I should have protected you. But here's what matters. His mother had been coming to my cabin for years, eating the food I left out. 3 generations of bobcats, maybe more." The old man smiled, the first time Sterling had ever seen joy on that weathered face. "The night you carved that bobcat in 19TP, a real bobcat watched through the window. Silas's grandmother, I think, like she knew, like the mountain itself was saying, 'This boy belongs here.'" Another cough, longer this time. "I taught Silas your truck sound. The engine has that particular knock through a rod 10 years ago. Didn't get it properly fixed. Every time you parked at the trailhead, Silas knew. He'd sit at the edge of the woods, watching for you, waiting for you to come up the trail. But you never did, and I never walked down. 2 cowards and 1 brave cat between us. The video timer showed 30 seconds left. The chestnuts are yours, the cabin, the workshop yours, but more than that, the mission is yours. Restore the forest, heal what the blight destroyed, do what Samuel would have done if he'd lived." Thaddeus reached toward the camera, then stopped. "One more thing. Check the horses." The screen went black. "What horses?" Sterling asked. Beaumont stood on unsteady legs, moved to the shelf where he'd found Samuel's notebook. Behind it, wrapped in oilcloth, 2 carved horses, one large, one small. The larger horse was finished, perfect in every detail. The smaller one was half complete, tool marks still visible where a 5-year-old's hands had tried to follow his cousin's guidance. Both were stained dark across the base, blood that had soaked into the grain 6 decades ago. Beaumont held them up to the light. On the bottom of the larger horse, Samuel had carved, "For my brother Beau," not cousin, brother. "He loved you," Eleanor said quietly. "Loved you more than—" A gunshot cracked through the morning air. Then another. Deputy Miller's radio exploded with static. Shots fired near the creek. "Someone's shooting at—" The transmission cut off. Sterling grabbed his rifle and pushed through the workshop door. The shots had come from downstream, near where they'd left Luke's truck. Deputy Miller sprinted past the cabin, fumbling with his service weapon's holster snap. "Stay with Eleanor," Sterling told Martha, then ran after Miller. The trail curved through the mountain laurel, the waxy leaves slapping against Sterling's arms. Another shot closer now. Not a rifle, smaller caliber, handgun. They burst into the clearing by the creek. Luke Jennings stood knee-deep in the water, his .38 raised, pointing at something moving through the undergrowth on the far bank. "Don't shoot!" Sterling shouted. Luke spun, gun swinging toward them. Miller dropped flat. Sterling kept his rifle low, non-threatening. "There's another one," Luke said, voice high and tight. "Another bobcat. Saw it near my truck." Sterling scanned the brush. A flash of tawny fur between the serviceberry bushes. Smaller than Silas. Female, maybe, or young male. "Put the gun down." "Luke?" It was going for the body, Silas's body. Luke's hand shook, the pistol barrel wavering. They're scavengers. It was going to... Bobcats don't scavenge their own kind, Doc Henley said, arriving behind them, breathing hard. That's a myth. The cat emerged from the brush 20 yards upstream. Sterling's breath caught. Same scarring pattern as Silas along the right flank, same damaged ear. That's not possible, he said. Beaumont pushed past them all, still carrying the carved horses. He stopped at the water's edge, staring at the bobcat. It's not Silas, Doc Henley said, pulling binoculars from his vest. Look at the size. This one's younger, maybe 2, 3 years old. The young bobcat sat on a flat rock, watching them. Its eyes held the same unsettling intelligence Sterling had seen in Silas. But there was something in its mouth, a stick, or it's carrying something, Beaumont said. The bobcat set down its burden, backed away 3 steps. The object rolled off the rock, splashed into the shallow water. Sterling waded in, retrieved it, a small wooden cylinder, the kind Thaddeus used to store maps. The wood was fresh carved, still showing tool marks. Thaddeus didn't make this, Beaumont said, taking the cylinder. This is amateur work, recent. Inside, a roll of paper, not old printer paper, the kind from any office. But the writing was Thaddeus's shaky hand. If you're reading this, the younger one found you. I call her Echo, Silas's mate. Yes, I know what Doc Henley would say, bobcats don't mate for life. But these 2 did. Found her last winter, injured, same snare that would later catch Silas. Fixed her up. She stayed. Sterling looked at the young bobcat, Echo, sitting perfectly still on her rock. Beaumont continued reading. She knows the paths, all of them, taught her alongside Silas. If something happens to him, she can lead you. Lead us where? Luke asked, finally lowering his pistol. Eleanor had arrived, moving carefully down the bank. The mother trees, the real ones. We have the map, Sterling said. The map shows 7 trees, Eleanor said. But there are more, always were. Thaddeus only told part of the truth in his journal. She pulled out her own phone, showed them a satellite image. See this ridge, government land, protected wilderness, no logging for 100 years. But in 1960 they were going to build a dam, flood the whole valley. I remember that proposal, Doc Henley said. Never happened because someone burned the surveyor's camp, destroyed all their equipment. Project got delayed, then canceled when the environmental movement picked up steam in the 70s. Sterling understood. Thaddeus. He torched it, Eleanor confirmed. Felony arson would have meant 20 years in prison. But nobody could prove it. Why does this matter now? Luke asked. Eleanor zoomed in on the satellite image. Because that valley has the largest surviving grove of American chestnuts in the eastern United States. Maybe 300 trees. Thaddeus found them in 1961, spent 60 years protecting them. That's impossible, Doc Henley said. The blight would have... The valley has a unique microclimate, Eleanor explained. Natural sulfur springs create a fungicide in the air. The blight can't survive there. Thaddeus figured it out, confirmed it with a botanist friend at the university. So, the seeds, Beaumont said, looking at the mason jar Sterling still carried. These aren't from 7 trees. They're from hundreds. Each one slightly different. Eleanor nodded. 60 years of selective breeding, taking the strongest, grafting them with resistant strains. These seeds could restore the entire Appalachian forest system. Echo stood, stretched like a house cat. She walked along the bank, stopped, looked back at them. She wants us to follow, Beaumont said. That's ridiculous, Luke said. It's just an animal. But Echo moved another 10 yards, stopped again, looked back. The message was clear. They formed a strange procession, Sterling and Beaumont in front, Eleanor moving slowly with Doc Henley's help, Martha documenting everything on her phone, Miller and Luke bringing up the rear. Echo stayed exactly 15 yards ahead, pausing when Eleanor needed to rest. The trail climbed steeply. Sterling's knees protested, but he noticed Beaumont moving steadily despite being nearly 70. The man had spent his life in these mountains, even when he was running from them. After 40 minutes, Echo left the trail, pushing through a wall of rhododendron. On the other side, a hidden path, barely visible. Game trail, Luke said. No, Beaumont corrected. Look at the cuts on these branches. Someone's been maintaining this. They emerged into a grove unlike anything Sterling had seen. American chestnuts towered overhead, their trunks massive, some 15 feet in circumference. The canopy blocked most of the sky, creating a cathedral of green light. My God, Doc Henley breathed. Echo led them deeper. The air smelled different here, sulphurous, yes, but also alive in a way the blighted forests weren't. Sterling could hear water, a spring bubbling somewhere close. They entered a clearing. In the center, a cabin not rough like Thaddeus's, but crafted with a Japanese precision. Every log fitted perfectly, no chinking needed. He built this, Martha asked. We built it, Eleanor said quietly. Thaddeus and I. In 19... Everyone turned to stare at her. We were lovers, she said simply. For 30 years, met here every Sunday, while my husband thought I was at church. After Harold died in 95, we talked about going public. But by then, the secret was so old it had become who we were. You knew everything, Beaumont said. It wasn't a question. Everything. Helped him file those adoption petitions. Helped him watch you from a distance. Helped him breed these trees. Eleanor walked to the cabin, ran her hand along a beam. This was our place, our secret, like everything else in Thaddeus's life. Inside the cabin, walls covered with maps, charts, genetic diagrams, a decades-long scientific project hidden in the mountains. There's something else, Eleanor said. She moved to a cabinet, pulled out a metal box. Security deposit box key, bank in Asheville. In your name, Beaumont. What? Thaddeus opened it in 1970. The day you left that bobcat carving, been depositing money ever since. Every carving he sold. Half went in that account. 60 years of compound interest. Why didn't he just give it to me? Because he wanted you to choose this life, not feel obligated to it. Eleanor pulled out a bank statement. There's enough there to fund the restoration project for 20 years. Maybe more. Echo had been sitting by the door. Now she stood, ears flattened, a low growl building in her throat. Sterling heard it, then engines, multiple vehicles, coming up the mountain. Who else knows about this place? He asked Eleanor. Nobody, just Thaddeus and me. Miller checked his radio, but they were too deep in the valley for a signal. The engines grew louder. Sterling recognized the sound ATV, at least 3. Echo bolted into the forest, through the trees. Sterling saw the first ATV break into view. The rider wore camo, rifle across the handlebars. Behind him, 2 more riders. One Sterling recognized with a cold shock, Cheryl, Beaumont's fired assistant. The other was a man in a suit, looking wildly out of place on an ATV. That's Davidson, Luke said. The developer. He's been trying to buy this whole mountain for years. Cheryl dismounted, pulled out a surveying instrument. The coordinates were right. This is it. Sterling understood then. She hadn't just been using Beaumont's accounts. She'd been going through his files, his research, looking for Thaddeus's secret. 300 virgin chestnuts, Davidson said, pulling out his phone to take pictures. Do you understand what timber this old is worth? Millions? Each tree is worth a fortune to the right buyer. The land's protected much, Sterling called out, stepping into view. Davidson smiled. Protected land can be unprotected with the right political contributions. Senator Blackwood owes me several favors. Cheryl had pulled out a chainsaw. Cheryl pulled the chainsaw's starter cord. The engine sputtered. Died. She pulled again. This time it roared to life. Blue smoke drifting across the grove. You can't cut these trees, Sterling said, moving forward. This is federal land. Davidson held up a document. Mineral rights lease from 1923. My company bought it last year. Technically, we're allowed to clear land for survey purposes. Mineral rights don't include timber, Eleanor said, her voice sharp with courtroom authority. They do if we're surveying for access roads. Davidson smiled. My lawyers have been over this. Cheryl revved the chainsaw, walking toward the nearest chestnut. The tree's trunk was 8 feet across, bark deeply furrowed, reaching up 90 feet. Beaumont stepped in front of her. You worked for me for 3 years. You knew what these trees meant. You paid me $12 an hour to schedule trophy hunts for rich idiots, Cheryl said over the engine noise. While sitting on this fortune, these trees are worth more than you ever paid me. It's not about money. Everything's about money when you don't have it. She raised the chainsaw. A gray blur hit Cheryl from the side. Not Echo, a larger bobcat, male, with scars across his muzzle. Cheryl went down hard, chainsaw flying from her hands, still running. It hit a rock, kicked wildly, then died. The male bobcat stood over her, not attacking, just pinning her with his weight. Cheryl froze, eyes wide. Nobody move, Doc Henley said quietly. That's a wild animal, not Silas, not trained, but Sterling saw something familiar in the cat's stance. The same patient waiting he'd seen in Silas that morning. Echo emerged from the brush, moving to stand beside the male. Then another bobcat, elderly, moving stiff, then 2 more, young ones. That's impossible, Doc Henley whispered. Bobcats don't form groups. These ones do, Eleanor said. Thaddeus wrote about it, something about this valley, the isolation, maybe the sulfur springs. They've developed different behaviors. Davidson's hired muscle, the man in camo, had unslung his rifle. Sterling saw his finger move to the trigger. You shoot, Sterling said, and I arrest you for poaching. Bobcat season doesn't open for 2 months. They're attacking? No, Miller said, his hand on his service weapon. They're defending. There's a big difference. The male bobcat stepped back from Cheryl, who scrambled to her feet and ran to Davidson's ATV. Davidson pulled out his phone. I'm calling the sheriff. This is assault. No signal, Luke said. Not in this valley. The bobcats spread out, 5 of them now, forming a loose line between the humans and the trees, not aggressive, just present. Martha had been typing on her phone, using offline apps. Mr. Davidson, I've been recording this entire encounter, including your admission to planning illegal timber harvest under false pretenses. Mineral rights. Won't hold up, Eleanor interrupted. I spent 10 years as a circuit judge. I know exactly how this will play out in court. You'll lose. And the attempted harvest of endangered species habitat will trigger federal involvement. These trees aren't protected. They will be. Beaumont's voice carried new authority. I own the surrounding land now, all of it, and I'm donating it to the Forest Service as a research station. Davidson's face flushed purple. You can't. Already done. Eleanor pulled out her phone, showed a document. Signed and witnessed an hour ago, before we came up here. Irrevocable trust. The Thaddeus and to Samuel Vance Memorial Forest, The developer looked between them, calculating. How much? For what? Beaumont asked. To walk away. Name your price. Beaumont knelt, picked up a handful of old chestnut leaves, brittle and brown. Thaddeus spent 60 years protecting these trees. My cousin died in a workshop that used chestnut beams. This whole mountain was covered in them once. He stood, let the leaves fall through his fingers. There's no price. There never was. Davidson grabbed the chainsaw, yanked the starter. Nothing. He yanked again, harder. The elderly bobcat walked forward, slow but deliberate. It sat directly in front of Davidson, looked up at him with clouded eyes. The message was clear. You're done here. We're leaving, Cheryl said, pulling at Davidson's arm. Now. They retreated to their ATVs. Davidson tried one more threat. This isn't over. I have connections. So do I, Eleanor said, including your wife's divorce attorney. I believe she's very interested in your hidden assets. Davidson's mouth opened, closed. He started his ATV, sprayed gravel turning around. The three vehicles disappeared down the trail. The bobcats remained for another moment. The elderly one approached Beaumont, sniffed his boots, the same boots he'd worn to the creek that morning, still carrying Silas's scent. He knew you, Eleanor said quietly. This is Silas's father. Has to be. Thaddeus mentioned him, called him Old Tom. Old Tom turned, walked back into the forest. The other cats followed, vanishing into the green shadows. Except Echo. She sat by the cabin door, waiting. She's staying, Beaumont said. She can't, Luke said. Wild animals don't. These ones do. Beaumont walked to the cabin, opened the door. Inside on a workbench lay tools, chisels, gouges, draw knives, all recently sharpened, and a note. Beaumont, if you're reading this, you found the real inheritance. Not money or land, but purpose. The trees are yours to protect. The seeds are yours to spread. The story is yours to finish. Echo knows all the trails. Trust her like I finally learned to trust. She won't fail you. Beaumont picked up a chisel, tested its edge, still sharp enough to cut paper. What will you do? Sterling asked. What I should have done 50 years ago. Beaumont looked around the grove, these impossible survivors. Stay, build, restore what was lost. The restoration will take decades, Doc Henley said. Good thing I'm stubborn. Beaumont managed a small smile. Thaddeus always said I was too stubborn. Guess he was counting on it. Eleanor walked to a particular tree, placed her hand on its trunk. We planted this one together and united. From seed, it was 6 inches tall. The tree rose 60 feet above them now, trunk thick as a car. He never gave up, she said. 60 years of waiting, working, believing these trees would matter again. They do, Martha said, still documenting. This grove, these seeds, they'll restore forests from Georgia to Maine. Sterling thought about Silas, wrapped in Beaumont's jacket, back at the creek. The bobcat had held on just long enough, delivered his message, brought everyone together. We should bury him here, Beaumont said, as if reading Sterling's mind. Silas, in the grove. They spent the afternoon digging a grave between 2 massive chestnuts. Everyone helped, even Luke. They wrapped Silas in cedar boughs. Thaddeus would have wanted that, and laid him deep in the mountain soil. Beaumont carved a marker that afternoon, working with the old tools in fading light. Not a tombstone, but a portrait in wood, a bobcat sitting alert, guarding something precious, as the sun set through the canopy. Echo appeared with something in her mouth. She dropped it at Beaumont's feet, a perfectly preserved chestnut flower, though the trees wouldn't bloom for months. From the greenhouse, Eleanor explained, pointing to a glass structure barely visible through the trees. Thaddeus forced blooms year-round for cross-pollination. Beaumont placed the flower on Silas's grave. 6 months later, the first seedlings from Thaddeus's seeds sprouted in nurseries across Appalachia. Beaumont worked with universities, the Forest Service, private landowners. Every seedling came with a card from the Vance Grove restoring what was lost. Echo remained, neither tame nor wild. She knew every trail, every hidden spring, every secret Thaddeus had mapped. Sometimes other bobcats joined her, that strange family that had learned to live differently in their isolated valley. Beaumont never left the mountain again. He carved in the workshop mornings, tended trees afternoons. People came to learn, children mostly, but adults too. He taught them what Thaddeus had taught him in silence all those years ago. Wood has memory, forests have patience, and sometimes the best inheritance is the chance to make things right. The chestnuts grew slow and steady, their roots deep in the ancient soil, in their spreading branches. The future took shape one ring at a time. I need to tell you something. After documenting Beaumont's story, I understood why Thaddeus kept those secrets. Sometimes love means letting someone become themselves, even if it breaks your heart. Every spring now, when I check the seedlings Beaumont planted, I see visitors leaving wooden tokens at Silas's marker, carved by children he's teaching. They don't know the full story, just that a bobcat's loyalty reunited a broken family. Echo still guides people to the grove. 5 years later, she's graying now, moving slower, but she knows every trail Thaddeus walked. Maybe that's the real inheritance, not the trees or land, but the paths between hearts that wildness teaches us to follow. This story, inspired by documented encounters between humans and wildlife in Appalachian communities, was created solely for entertainment purposes. The narrative does not condone, encourage, or promote any form of violence, harmful behavior, or illegal wildlife interaction. All characters and events are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to real persons, living or deceased, or actual events is purely coincidental. Wildlife should always be observed from safe distances, and any injured animals should be reported to professional wildlife rehabilitation services. The portrayal of human-wildlife bonds in this story represents fictional scenarios and should not be attempted in real life.